Hey, before we jump in, I want to give you a quick word about the partner that's making this summer series possible, and that's NextGrad. If you're in higher ed marketing, you already know the challenge. Students are getting bombarded with college messages every single day, and most of it just blends together. NextGrad takes a different approach. Instead of fighting for the attention online, they put your institution's message right inside the high school, the place where students actually are day in and day out. They're in more than 2,500 schools across North America, which means your future students might be walking past a Next screen right now. Hey, I've been following NextGrad for several years, and I love what they're doing. I think it's extremely creative. I've actually been able to work on some of the creative with my clients to get in front of the students, and it's making a big difference. And I got to say, I'm a big fan of these folks. If you want to be the institution they remember when it's time to decide, go check them out right now at nextgrad.com. NextGrad, where students see you first. Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. I'm Bart Kaler, and today's guest is Dave Murray. He's the Associate Vice President for Marketing and Communications at Ferris State University. Dave came to higher ed marketing by a wonderfully non-traditional route, which I love stories like that. He spent more than 25 years in journalism, a longtime education reporter and editor at the Flint Journal and the Grand Rapids Press and MLive, before crossing over to the other side of the notebook as a deputy press secretary and then press secretary to Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. From there, he directed communications for Michigan State Agency and then for Grand Rapids Community College, where he entered into higher ed. His team earned more than 50 regional and national awards. Now at Ferris State, the career-focused university founded back in 1884 and home to roughly about 10,000 students, Dave oversees marketing, public relations, crisis comms, web design, photography, and video. He's known for running the shop like a newsroom, a steady daily drumbeat of real stories, always with a photo, written so a stretched-thin newsroom can run them almost word for word. It's a long-game approach to reputation that, in his words, simply works. So excited about sharing this conversation with you. And with that, here's our conversation with Dave Murray. Hey, Dave, it's so great to have you here. We always ask our guests one question at the beginning. What's something interesting or surprising that you recently learned that our audience might find useful or fun?
Sure. So I was at a conference last week, and an author, Jeff Salingo, talked about his study that he had just done. And he had said that in talking to parents, only 16% of them used or thought prestige was the most important part of their search for a college. They were more interested in value and fit and affordability. And that really resonated with me because we're a school that was founded in 1884 on the idea that everyone should get an education here in Michigan. And so our gates are open pretty wide intentionally. That's our mission. So when he said that, I was like, whoa, that's us. That's perfect. We're the other 84%.
That's great. A lot of my clients will fit that same. A lot of listeners on this would say, that's me too. So that's so great. Well, I'm so glad that you're with us today. And as we talked about in the intro, you've kind of made a crossover from the newsroom to now the news source. And so a lot of what I want to talk about here at the beginning of the conversation is just about how you covered education for years at the Flint Journal and the Grand Rapids Press, and then you jumped to the other side of the notebook. Okay. You went, you came on as Governor Sidney's press secretary. Tell me about how all of that led you to Ferris State University.
Sure. And it was so exciting to have all those roles. And working for Governor Rick Snyder, I learned so much. And it was so, being on the other side, like you said, the side of the notebook, and getting to see the questions coming at you, I was like, okay, well, how would I ask this if I was a reporter, right? So when you work for state government, especially in the governor's office, you know that there's a built-in termination point there, right? You're right. You look for a new job. And so I thought, what I've gained all these skills now, right? These new skills to go with my old skills. What do I want to do with those? So how can I use those to do something that I love? And I had covered Grand Rapids Community College as a reporter, and I lived in Grand Rapids still. And they had an opening for a communications director, and I knew the folks. And I said, well, we know you. This is a perfect match for us. So, but I've never done community college or higher education marketing before. I've always been a news guy.
Right.
And they said, well, let's try this. And I was there for 5 years, and I got to work with an amazing president, Dr. Bill Pink, and an amazing vice president, Dr. Kathy Mullins, and they both went to Ferris.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, I really loved working for them. And so when there was an opening at Ferris, I was like, let's keep going.
That's great.
And I was blessed that they brought me here to continue working with them. I've been very blessed throughout my career, my life, and that was one of the top lessons, was meeting them and getting to continue being inspired by them and working with them.
That's a great story. I love that. And having a background outside of higher ed myself, I was in the agency world for a big part of my career. I know that there's something about all those years, for me in the agency, for you in the reporter's chair, that teach you about reaching people that you just couldn't learn any other way. So what were some of those takeaways that you learned, I guess I would say, in the marketplace outside of education that you bring into higher ed now?
The people like good stories, right? You can put out a lot of press releases, but if they're not anything people care about, you're not going to get there, right? So it's knowing what's an interesting story, what's a human story that people like. When I had just started here, we had our December commencement, and I was walking around looking for stories, right? And I saw a student who was a young mom, and there was a baby tucked right under her gown. I thought, okay, there's a story there, guys.
That's right.
This is like a newborn. We're talking to her. And then afterwards, we learned that she was a non-traditional student. She was coming back. She was someone who learned through online classes off in our student success hubs in about 2 hours north. And her daughter, she said, she's been to all these classes with me. I thought she needed to be here for commencement too.
That's great. Very good.
So it's knowing the kinds of stories that will resonate and not just flooding people with stories that they might not care about as much.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. I like what you said there about hunting for stories, looking for stories. I mean, that is very much a newsroom type of perception. And at least from my perspective, so much of higher ed, at least the way higher ed has grown up, is kind of coming out of the advancement office. We need to get this information out. Let's just put a press release out. But you've changed that at Ferris State. You've kind of flipped it. Instead of being a press release shop, you're more of a newsroom. So when did that click for you, and how? Tell me more about that, because I think a lot of people would be interested in how that works.
Sure. Well, when I was at Grand Rapids Community College, which has great stories all over the place, right? But President Ping said one day, he said, "Dave, people keep telling me we are West Michigan's best kept secret." I said, "I think you are." And he said, "I never want to hear that again." He says, "Your job is to make us not a secret anymore." I said, "Okay, how do we go about doing that?" And we thought, well, let's use the skills I learned as a reporter, skills I learned in the governor's office, and how do we get stories out there? And sure enough, we kept pushing out good, clever content, interesting content that highlighted our programs and our people. And then now people kept saying, "We see GRCC everywhere. Where have you guys been?" Like, well, we've always been here, but now we're finding new ways to tell our stories. So when it came to Ferris, he said, "Remember that conversation we had about the West best kept secret?" I said, "Yeah, you never want to hear that again." He said, "Yeah, now we'll do it again here on steroids." So.
That's great. And I know that in a lot of ways, newsrooms and higher ed both kind of suffer the same thing, where they're overstretched right now. I mean, budgets are slim. We know that in the media, in the marketplace, as far as news and media goes. But that's also very much the case in higher ed a lot of times in our comms and marketing teams. And so how has kind of coming from what I would assume as an overworked reporter, because I think most reporters are, how has that helped you lead during this season of higher ed that's full of pressure? I mean, how did you apply some of that to maybe what you found when you came into higher ed? Sure.
Working very hard, right? There's no substitute for that. You have to, this is a passion, right? This is not, it's not just any job. This is something I believe in. One of my Clifton strengths, top one is positivity. Second is belief. Right, so I have to believe in what I'm doing, and I do so much here, so I'm all in on it, right?
Yeah.
And you surround yourself with people who are all in on it too, and they realize stuff happens at night. Good events need to be where the story's there. Stuff happens on the weekends, so we kind of work that way, and we find ways to be in places where stories are being told, and also know what the media needs too. Like I said, if we put out too many press releases that just don't have any meaning to them, they're going to lose interest, not even open the email anymore.
Right. You're going to lose the trust too, I imagine.
Absolutely, but right now they say, "Oh, what's Dave got for us today?" Right? Otherwise, it's like, oh, it's another pressure.
Right. That's great. So they're not press releases anymore. They're news stories. And so let's talk a little bit about the philosophy, because I know that you've stated before that you've got a really unique approach to at least one story or release a day, and it always has to have a photo. And so Written So Newsroom could just run it almost word for word. So walk us through what that looks like pragmatically, because I'm sure a lot of people are hearing that. It's like, that's a total different way than what we're thinking about it. I mean, where do you put the contact information and the press release for immediate release? Talk about it.
All that stuff, yeah. And a lot of old school releases will say about Ferris State at the bottom. And
exactly.
Newspapers don't work that way anymore, right? Media doesn't work that way anymore. And I learned this because I was there for the transition from print to focus to web focus. And being there on the ground floor of that and being energized by it, there were a lot of people at the paper like, oh, this internet thing's a fad. I'm like, I don't know.
I heard that too. I don't know enough.
I think this is going to stick around, guys. How are we going to leverage this the best way? Knowing what they need, right? And we were very conscious of clicks when I was a newspaper reporter at the website. And I knew that every story, we were posting them ourselves, had to have art. And you could either go to the file folder and use the same one over and over again, or if back then a rare release came with art, we were like, oh, great. So I made a conscious decision here. Hey, you need good photographers, right? You need good art.
Right.
Sometimes a camera phone will work. They're getting so good now, but invest in photographers. And I write it as if it's a straight news story, knowing that important information has to be up top. You got to make people care. When I was a adjunct professor of teaching journalism, I write on the board on the first day, make me care in big letters, right? And that approach applies to our news stories too. Because it can go to a news desk or an assignment editor, and I want them to say, oh, this is something good. I care about this.
Right.
Find what they care about. And then if I know they're going to need a photo, I want to make sure they've got a good one.
Yeah.
Right? Because that can sell the story. Often we know people scroll, right? And if they're scrolling and they see a really good photo, they're going to stop at that. And what makes a good photo? Well, something that shows my students. I can show them working on a plastics injection machine, that we have some really cool ones, right? But just the photo of the machine itself isn't going to excite anyone.
No.
Right? But my student, if they're branded, even better, working on that machine, showing a viable career path, showing that this is a skill that you can learn if you come here to the state, that's going to help sell the story. To the picture, go back for the student with the baby, that picture was fantastic. Andrew Schmidt shot that. And I know that helped send that story literally around the world because it was such a great photo. So know what the media needs, right? Know what they're looking for and know how to package it so they can use it quickly. I was talking to a local reporter, and he's a good one. And he said, Dave, I have a quota of 3 stories a day, 15 stories a week. That's a lot of news. So how can I help him, right? How can I get him content that he doesn't have to spend a lot of time repackaging it, getting that about paragraph to put it in the middle somewhere? I'm going to do all of that for him. And so because I know what they're looking for, I can do that. The team that I have here, we have several writers on my team who are excellent writers. And they are former news guys too. And they have adopted that philosophy. And that it makes it fun, but it gets the news out there because something gets picked up everywhere.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that. And I imagine when you came, you didn't have former news guys on your team, and the idea of one news story a day makes people's heads spin. They're like, whoa, this is a little different than what I'm used to. So, and I think that a lot of people are listening to this. I know a lot of people take notes during this, and so they're like, okay, I've circled one news story a day, but how am I going to go back then sell that? How am I going to make that happen? How am I going to give legs to that? So make the use case for it. So why is a steady stream of news stories like that volume, how are you going to make sure that it's really quality going out and it's helpful rather than just more noise? I mean, what's the difference between fluff and a really good story?
Right. That human element to it and showing. We always want to take people from that starting point to the ending point. Right? What will you gain from the story, and what career will you get from taking this class at Ferris? Right? We want to show them. I always put in U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers in the story. Say we have a story about HVAC, which is really hot today, right? And we talked about, well, there's a demand for people in this field, and we have one of the only 2 bachelor programs in the country devoted to HVAC.
Perfect timing. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So it all links. So it's a news story that has an angle that they're interested in right now, today. Yep. And it is linking back to our programs and the careers you can get while being here with really good art. With great guys working in the bowels of an air conditioner. It's a great.
That's awesome.
But you're right. At first, people were like, every day, you're nuts. I said, no, I did it at Graduate Community College. We can do it here. Yeah. And once you get into it and you love it, and you see they get picked up all over, and the faculty was saying, oh, my goodness, we were on the front page of the local paper. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And they're engaged, and then they see the stories, and they want coverage as well, and that helps. That helps find the stories. That helps. They're anxious to talk to you, because sometimes folks are a little media shy. They're like, no, we'll help you with this. We'll walk you through this. And that's how you get good, interesting people stories that relate back to your programs that will help change their lives.
Yeah, I like that, because there's a real intentionality with what you're doing. I mean, and a lot of times I've worked with teams before where you challenge them on something, they're like, there's no way I can do that. It's like, yeah, you can. And I think it's a mindset shift. It's a way to think differently, but it takes intentionality from the leader, as well as courageous leadership from the leader to say, you can do this. And I'm gonna gently push you into that. So let's talk about some pragmatics, because I know a lot of times when you're releasing these every day, you're not releasing them on the web page and then just also sending them to because that would defeat the purpose of giving the newspaper kind of an exclusive. So walk us through that. How does that work? And then if they don't pick it up, what do you do?
Sure. And most things get picked up somewhere, but not everything. It's rare that everything gets picked up everywhere, right? Yeah. So I know that some stories will be of much more interest to my local paper here, and those guys work so hard. And then we're blessed to be in a good media market. Grand Rapids is less than an hour away, and there's 3 TV stations there, and M Live covers there, and there's TV stations up here. So we know likely someone's going to find some value in the story, and they're going to pick it up. But not all of them do. But also, I want to get them to my stakeholders. I want to get them to my alumni. I want to get them to people on campus sometimes. So we do a couple of different things. Everything, once it goes out to the media, we put it on the website so it's there. And then we have a strong social media component, and we work hard to put these good stories with good art, because the art will catch it on social media for sure, right?
Right.
We put them on there. Then we also have a weekly newsletter that summarizes all the press releases for the week, and with the pictures, and that goes out. People sign up for it, but that goes out to hundreds of people who see it every day. And those are the stakeholders mostly. Those are the necessarily we're not going to get prospective students that way, but we're going to connect with our alumni and our stakeholders that way.
Yeah. Yeah, there's understanding your stakeholders and understanding discovery versus, the own media that you're going to be using is really good.
Yeah. Good. So that between, it's a shotgun approach, right? We also do an internal email every day with listing our story or press releases we put out, but also any coverage we've gotten that day.
Okay.
And so that goes out to the campus, again, outside stakeholders who want it every day. And a lot of them do.
That's great. One of the things I really like on this podcast is just people like yourself coming on and giving us really pragmatic advice that can just be used immediately after this. And so as I'm hearing you talk, and I've heard you go back to it several times about it's the art. You got to have good art. You got to have a good art. So help me set up, the marketing and comms teams that are listening to this and wanting to implement this, and they want to release these ready to run news stories. What's kind of the real difference? What do they need to do pragmatically I know you talked about artwork and you talked about maybe don't put about us at the bottom. Just kind of walk us through, what does the structure look like? What's the headline? How's the angle? What do you do with that?
Sure. We talk about what is the caring part, right? Make me care.
Okay.
So you start with that, right? If the headline's not going to grab them, or the subject line in the email for the reporters, if that doesn't grab them, they're not going to keep going, right? So that's important. We always work on, is this a good lead? Do we tell our story in that lead? Do we not just start it and then have people find it in the second or third paragraph? Nope, it's got to grab them right away, right, even in a feature story. And then we have a good photo library that we've built up over time. So if a story pops about the HVACR program, I've got a library to go through. So we'll pick days where we just go to those departments with their blessing, right? And spend a couple hours photographing all the things that happened.
And organizing it well so you can get to it when you need it.
In a hurry, yeah. Yep. And that's super helpful. We have a staff photographer. We have a student intern who takes pictures for us. I also use some quality freelancers, folks I've known for years. One great guy named Steve Jessmore just got inducted to the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
So he knows what what a great photo is.
Yeah.
And how to shoot it. So you add those elements in there. I always talk about the programs because the stories are an opportunity to talk about the program, right? So I always make sure there's a link to that program's page on our website because that was ran to prospective students. We talk about if we can get the Bureau labor statistics quotes in there. Right? There are pieces and elements that go to it that is just more than the human. And how does this relate back to Ferris?
Okay, yeah.
And the things that we do here. But we have to kind of check those boxes to make sure we got all those things in there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thanks for that recipe. I mean, I hope people kind of rewind and write that down. That's really good. So let's talk in the final part of our conversation. I just want to kind of talk a little bit about. I mean, it's one thing to be having these daily news stories, which I think is brilliant. I love that. But then there's also this long game of the reputation. I mean, I love the quote you had at the beginning from your president at GLCC at the time, who's now the president at Ferris, who's like, I don't want to ever be the best kept secret. And I've heard that so many times, whether it's been in cabinet meetings with presidents or boards or whatever. It's like, we're the best kept secret. And I'm like, you don't want to be that. And so I love that. But part of that long game is once you get out from being the best kept secret is keeping that reputation and making sure that's there. And so a steady drumbeat of the good stories. And but eventually there's going to be bad news that comes out. There's going to be things that happen. And how do you set that up to really help manage the reputation? And maybe what you're doing helps do that. Just kind of walk us through what that looks like from your point of view.
We know bad news stories happen, that you can't prevent some from never happening, right? It's inevitable. If that's all, and those will be covered, right? That is absolutely 100% going to get covered, right? But if that's all people know, if that's all they see are the bad stories when they pop up every once in a while, then they're not getting a full picture of what happened at Ferris State University. So I want to make sure that's not all they know. So if they see the steady drumbeat, it could be a post here, it could be a news story here, it could be a video on Instagram. But if they see that over and over and over, good news, or even accurate, helpful news, when the bad news happens, and it will happen, it's, wow, Ferris is having a bad day. And people get that, right? Everyone has a bad day.
Right.
But that's not all they know. They don't just only know the bad days. They know all of it.
That's great. I love that. So I think that same long game instinct shows up with recruitment and admissions. And I know that, the marketing team and the comms team, they help with recruiting students. I mean, that's the reason you're doing the program features and the stories and those links back to the website. And so being a familiar name in a student's world long before they ever fill out an application is part of that reputation, I think. So how do you think about reaching prospective students early, the right way, where they already are as you're doing these stories, knowing that, hey, mom and dad might see this, the student might see this. So where are ways that you maybe that you guys have found has been helpful for that reputation to show up as they're reading those stories as well?
Sure, and that is, we have a strong marketing team here as part of our university advancement marketing team. Right? It can't just be the news stories. It's got to be so much more, right? And that is the outdoor, that is the digital ads, and those can link back to stories too, right?
Right.
When the football team wins the national championship, which we've done for the last 5 years, I'm excited. But we put up billboards. Excited about that. And that leads back to the news stories. When Carnegie Classifications this year named us an Opportunity University, and we're so proud of that, right? That's a billboard that Bulldogs earn more, and you might see those all over Michigan as we speak.
Yeah.
But that leads back to the stories as well. So it's not just connecting through the stories, it's connecting through all the traditional and non-traditional ways that are at hand for us. Because people are so busy these days.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's not sitting home looking at their news website every day. They're out and about. They're doing their things. They're going to Detroit Tigers games. We have a Bulldogs ad on the fence at Comerica Park this year for the first time. And I know that's going to get on TV all the time. But that doesn't necessarily tell the story, but that raises awareness to get you to the stories. So if we keep not only steady drumbeat of news, but also all those marketing techniques that we do,
right,
working with our high schools. We work very closely with a number of high schools, more and more as we expand our reach into out-of-state places. But we want people to become aware of us. Then they can help when they search. They Google search, they're going to find Ferris stories.
Right.
We know that. So it's a coordinated effort that goes way beyond the news stories, but into the traditional areas of marketing well. And you have to work with it. Our admissions team is great. We work closely together. We have a strong view book that we've just overhauled.
Right.
We have an acceptance packet now that makes people go, wow, this is neat, right? And that's taking their ideas, working with our design team, and say, okay, what can we do to really make this stand out?
Yeah.
All of that hopefully leads them to wanting to know more and then finding all the cool stories that we're telling about the programs and the people.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're really thinking about, I mean, you mentioned partnering with the high schools. I mean, your admissions team's going there, doing school visits, that you've got the view book, but I think you're also working with NextGrad and actually having those digital billboards right there in the high schools where the students are seeing them. And I love that concept because it does add to that curiosity that tell me more about this. And when they get the view book and mom sees the story or they see the story, it's this loop that just continues to build that reputation, which I really like. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, and we are very excited about those digital boards in the high schools. We did this year. We're on the back cover of the Detroit Lions yearbook. That was new for us.
Yeah.
Ferris keeps popping up in places.
Yeah.
That other colleges aren't. There's spaces other colleges don't seem to be in, and we have kind of a fail-fast philosophy on that. Not everything works.
No.
If it works, okay, we'll know next time not to do it, but we tried it and we know that it doesn't work. Some things work great and we'll keep doing them. But the idea is you don't innovate if you keep doing the same thing year after year after year.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that fail fast. I'm a big believer in that as well. So just before we go to the closing, we've talked a little bit about crisis. We've talked a little about the reputation. But one thing I wanted to ask you, and this might be a little bit of a curveball, so forgive me, Dave, but as a former newsman and knowing that you have, and I love the fact that, I discovered today that, these newsroom people have to get three stories a day. That's a lot. And I love how you're accommodating them. How do I build relationships with those folks? Because in the past, I know I took some PR classes in college and relationships mattered and all that. That was in the 80s. And so it's a decades ago. But tell me about relationships, because I still think they matter a lot. And how would somebody listening today saying, okay, I want to move from press releases to news stories, but who do I start to even figure out who I should be sending those to?
Sure. No, that's great, because it is about relationships. And that's where my experience in the media world helps me out a little bit. Because I know if a PR guy calls out of the blue, I'm going to be a little suspicious at first. Right?
Right.
Like, what's he doing? But if I have a relationship with the reporter, and they know, okay, if Dave's calling me, he must be something kind of cool. But how do you get there at first?
Right.
It takes time to build those, right? I always send people a thank you note when they write a nice story. Always. I have a stack of notes here, and I love writing a note. Hey, that was a great job. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Being available for them late day and night and understanding what their jobs are is not necessarily between 9 and 5 or 8 and 5. So if you get that call at 8:30 from the local station, do you have an expert who knows this, who can respond to this thing that's happening somewhere else in the state or the world? Right. And then helping them out and saying, yeah, we can do that. Hold on. Right. And then following through and doing that and making sure that they have it. We do sit down with reporters every once in a while and say, hey, I know your job is tough. How can I help you? Mm-hmm. What are you looking for from us? What's the best way to get a story to you guys? And sometimes they'll say, well, the main news desk is fine. Send it there. Other times, especially in competitive newsrooms, they say, no, send it to me.
Right.
And we do. And to the main newsroom, right? But if that's helpful for them to get news directly in their box and their phones as they're scrolling through every morning looking for a story for the day, that builds that trust. Spend time with them when they come here, right? We invite them up for different events. Stick with them. Make sure they get what they want, not in the sense where they think you're covering, hiding something.
Right.
But But what do you guys need? What kind of shot are you looking for? What kind of background do you want? Do you want students? You want staff? You want faculty?
Good.
How can I help you get what you're looking for? And then I have to trust that they're going to tell the story well.
Right.
Most of the time they do. They work hard. No one's out to do us in, right? They want a good story to tell. Yeah. And I'm happy to accommodate them and help them. But you're right. That's those first steps. Get to know them. Be friendly. Email. When you see they do a really good story, let them know. Even if it's not one about us. Say, that was a heck of a story. Good job covering it.
Good. Well, I think it's just being human and treating people like we'd want to be treated and building those relationships. So I love that. Thanks for allowing me to ask that extra question there, Dave. So, hey, as we kind of close out, I just want to give you an opportunity. We always do this at the end. I mean, if for a marketing enrollment leader listening today, I mean, what's one step they can take to better connect newsroom style storytelling, reputation, and enrollment in their strategy? I mean, there's just one takeaway from everything we've talked about. What would you give them?
News never happens at my desk, right? I get out of my office, I eat in the dining hall here, and everyone passes through dining hall,
yep.
Right? They say, oh, this day, and inevitably, a couple of times a week, people will come over and talk to me and say, hey, we got this going on. Did you hear about this program we're doing? I get so many great stories over a hamburger, right?
That's great.
It's fantastic. So show up at the events, go to the concerts, go to the events on the quad. Go to when they have all the student tents and the student organizations. Go and shake their hands and say hi. Look at their swag, right? Ask them what they do, and get to know people on your campus, because, like I said, when the bad things happen, they'll have to deal with it.
Right.
But if you built that trust and you built that respect, and they know that you're here to help them tell their story that they're all so passionate about, that goes a long way. Not every day is the meal the best one, but I'm there because that's where I meet folks.
Love that. I love that, Dave. Well, I have so enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to staying in touch. But if someone listening wanted to follow up with you and maybe ask a follow-up question or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Certainly. Our website is ferris.edu. Okay. Ferris, Ferris.edu. And there's a news feed at the bottom there. Always check out the news stories. I'm a little biased. And hopefully check your local papers in and around Michigan if you are looking for news about us. And ideally, we're going to be there in some way, shape, or form.
Great. And your contact information is on the website?
Absolutely. Search marketing and communications. David A. Murray at ferris.edu is my email. And everyone's got it because I hear from a lot of folks.
Very good. Well, Dave, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you so much for taking some time to join us today on the podcast, and I wish you well.
Thank you, sir. This has been wonderful, and I've enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Higher Ed Marketer, and a special thanks to our friends over at NextGrad. First impressions matter. Make sure you're making yours when it counts most. Visit nextgrad.com to learn more. NextGrad, where students see you first. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with a colleague and join us on LinkedIn at The Higher Ed Marketer. This podcast is powered by Kaler Solutions, your trusted partner in mission fit marketing. Hey, you know what? We'll see you next week with another great guest.
The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is proud to be a part of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast Network. Discover even more conversations, resources, and tools to help you grow your institution at thehigheredmarketer.com, your go-to community for all things higher ed marketing and leadership.